The world's largest asset manager has just filed for a Bitcoin ETF, but today I'm going to show you the 5 pieces of evidence that I believe proves that BlackRock is part of a coordinated government attack on Bitcoin. I know, before you call me a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, you're going to want to hang around because I have uncovered a long lost video of Larry Fink himself in 2017. And before we play that video, I want to quickly show you guys what has transpired in the past 33 days because it's awfully coincidental how rapidly things are happening today. So of course, on June 6th, Binance was sued by the SEC, and then the other largest exchange in the Bitcoin space, CoinBeast, was sued on the following Tuesday, the very next day, by the SEC once again. And then only 8 days later, BlackRock came out with their ETF filing. And guess what happened this week? On June 19th, which is actually the day that I'm recording this one, the Bank of International Settlements came out with a very interesting video that I'm going to play for you guys right now.
Many smart contracts can be bundled together like a money Lego. Greater interoperability and automated transfers could ultimately benefit consumers.
So everybody's favorite central banker, Augustus Carstens, came out with some very choice words. And let's not forget, he was the central banker who last year said that central bank digital currencies are going to give our leaders and our tyrants absolute control over our money.
The central bank will have absolute control.
He is also the central banker who said that Bitcoin has already lost against fiat money. We're going to talk a little bit more about Augustus later on in today's video, but I want to first actually point your attention to something that didn't quite happen in the month of June, but happened on May 25th that fits into this timeline very interestingly, and that came out of everybody's favorite bureaucrat, Klaus Schwab. Okay, on May 5th, the World Economic Forum actually released a 35-page crypto white paper. So again, think about the order of events. This was only around 2 weeks before Binance and Coinbase both got sued by the SEC, and they called for a globally coordinated attack to squash the adoption of Bitcoin and crypto around the world. And we're going to dive into that report a little bit later, but I want to actually circle back to BlackRock. And I want to show you guys this little video that I've uncovered of Larry Fink in 2017 saying some very interesting things about Bitcoin.
But most importantly, what I think about most of these cryptocurrencies, it just identifies how much money laundering there is being done in the world.
Is it time yet for BlackRock to either trade in digital assets or digital virtual currencies, if you prefer, or to create a product for your clients?
We're not hearing any demand from any of our clients other than maybe some speculative stuff. We're being asked that question, but it's more of like a venture capital type of interchange. But we're not hearing clients saying we want to use this as an asset class. No.
It's not an institutional thing yet.
It's far from that. As I said, it's much more of a speculative platform for Asia, and it's heavily used for money laundering.
There you have it. They're the words straight from the horse's mouth, and I thought it was really interesting. He actually called Bitcoin an index for money laundering, and he also said that he had received no interest from institutional investors in 2017 looking to actually invest into Bitcoin. So what has changed, Larry? Why are you so interested in Bitcoin today in 2023? So interested, in fact, that you actually file for a Bitcoin ETF. Well, I believe what's changed is governments today in 2023 have come to the realization that they need to attack Bitcoin, okay? They need to take it down, okay? So let's think about this for a second. Before 2020, governments didn't care about Bitcoin. They were actually laughing at us for 12 years between 2008 and 2020, okay? It goes back to that great Gandhi quote. They did not care about us, but today they are fighting us. If you look back only 3 years, since 2020, we saw the enormous China nation state attack on Bitcoin, okay? In 2021, the second largest nation state in the world tried to kill Bitcoin and they failed. Then in 2022, we saw a little bit more of a undercover attack, so to say, from our elites in high places. The IMF has tried to discourage Bitcoin usage in countries like El Salvador and countries like Argentina, bribing them, saying, hey, if you want a $45 billion loan, you must discourage your Argentinian citizens to use Bitcoin. How dare they have an escape plan? You need to force those Argentinians to use the Argentinian peso that is inflating at over 100% per year. That's what the IMF said to Argentina in 2022. And then in 2023, early 2023, the first attack we saw was Operation Choke Point 2.0. Okay, we saw the controlled demolition of Silicon Valley Bank as well as Silvergate Bank, which were the two largest banks that actually serviced all of these Bitcoin and quote unquote crypto companies in the space. And now that flow of capital has all been cut off. And now I believe we're watching the big guns being pulled out. Okay, I believe the elites have said, hey, look, we need to come up with an even better plan to take down Bitcoin. And that's what I believe this BlackRock ETF filing is all about, okay? So let's start breaking this one down. So you guys know I love to run the numbers on this channel, so we're going to run them once again. We can see here that BlackRock is 575 and 1. That means that they have filed 576 ETFs in their life, and there is a 99.86% chance that the SEC approves a BlackRock filed ETF. So they're not just going to file a Bitcoin ETF if they know they're going to fail and not push it through. They're only going to file one if they have a very good reason to do so. So this begins to get us into why I believe we should be watching BlackRock very carefully. Okay, so the first reason that we should be watching BlackRock very, very carefully is how connected they are. The first connection we're going to look at today is their connection with the largest central bank in the world, and that is the United States. Okay, let's think back to 2020 and remind ourselves of what happened. Central bankers around the world printed over $10 trillion of freshly printed fiat money, and who was actually in charge of distributing that freshly printed fiat money? Okay, it was BlackRock. Remember what the Federal Reserve did? We can see from this headline here, Federal Reserve taps BlackRock to purchase bonds for the government. And BlackRock took that money and they ran. They ran so far that they actually ended up buying billions of dollars of their own bonds. Okay, let's remember, BlackRock is an asset manager, the largest in the world. And they also have an enormous amount of ETFs that they create themselves, okay? Lots of people want to send money to BlackRock and let BlackRock manage it for them. And that is because they are one of the most connected asset managers in the space, and they just seem to keep on making money. And that could be due to some of the other very interesting connections Larry Fink and BlackRock has, okay? They are also heavily connected to everybody's favorite World Economic Forum. That's right. We can see here from this little headline that BlackRock is actually on the board of advisors at the World Economic Forum. And this is also where BlackRock's ESG agenda is probably being pushed out of, okay? Let's think about who are the people that are most concerned about climate change and, you know, all things going on in terms of ESG, social credit scoring? It's BlackRock and the World Economic Forum, okay? And that is probably due to this little partnership they have. So this brings us to the final two pieces of evidence that I believe proves that Bitcoin is under attack by these globalist institutions, okay? How do you attack Bitcoin? You can't kill it from the outside. You have to actually kill it from the inside. And you need to change the core properties and values that makes Bitcoin valuable, okay? So what makes Bitcoin valuable? The fact that it's very decentralized and the fact that there is a limited amount of coins, 21 million, there is a finite supply, and those two properties are actually backed up by the fact that Bitcoin is protected by proof of work mining. And this gets us into a very interesting statement that was actually hidden inside the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF filing. I'm going to read it for you guys. So the quote actually says that in the event of a hard fork, the sponsor, who of course is BlackRock, will use its discretion to determine which network should be considered the appropriate network. There is no guarantee that BlackRock will choose the digital asset that is ultimately the most valuable fork. So if that doesn't give you alarm bells in the back of your head and remind you of the 2017 hard fork situation, well, it should, and it should now, because I believe we are watching a 2023 hard fork 2.0 situation potentially playing out. And for us to understand that, we need to understand a little bit more about ESG, blood coins, Kevin O'Leary's connections to the World Economic Forum, and what ESG even is. So let's start breaking this puppy down. ESG stands for environment, social, and governance, okay? And put simply, ESG investing is just like a social score for corporations. So a corporation will get scored and ranked based upon whether they are good or bad for the environment, society, and quote-unquote governance. So of course, BlackRock is the world's largest ESG asset manager. We can see here that they dwarf all other asset managing funds, okay? So I believe that ESG is actually the Trojan horse for a central bank digital currency and credit scores for the entire West. We've seen these rolled out in China. They are absolutely Orwellian. They have eyeball and facial scanning technology over there in China. Now, we all know that censorship over here on YouTube has been improving a little bit in 2023, but heaven forbid, if this video does get taken down and our channel does get deleted, make sure you're still connected to us over on Twitter, as well as on email. We are always publishing full summaries of these videos with all the details in written form, and you're actually going to get a little bit extra in the free emails that we do pop out, because there is only so much we can cram into these 10-minute YouTube videos. So make sure you sign up to our newsletter. Both of those are linked down below. And let's move on and start looking at some of the very surprising things with ESG. Now, I believe this is all an attack on three things, okay? I believe the elites around the world have come to the conclusion that they need to control the money, the energy supply, and the food supply. It all goes back to this infamous quote from Henry Kissinger. He says, who controls the food supply controls the people, who controls the energy controls the continents, and who controls the money controls the world. And I believe that the World Economic Forum and this entire ESG movement has been on the cards for many, many decades, and they have, the elites, been very fearful of what decentralized digital technologies could actually mean for the power disparity or power balance that there is today between the state and the individuals, okay? We can actually see that since 1973, the World Economic Forum has been on record for actually trying to diminish our energy usage. Every year they get together and they actually talk about the major events influencing the world, and they talk about how they can potentially influence these events and steer the world in the way they want to steer it. And you can see here, I've actually dug up some of the manuscripts from their 1973 meeting titled A Prescient Warning on the Environment. And they've been warning about the environment for 50 years. They've been predicting about things like acid rain and how it's going to destroy the planet. They even warned about the planet being too cold at one stage. Today, the planet's too hot. I believe all of these predictions are all just, used to stoke fear and actually try to curb our energy usage. And you can see since the 1970s, for the first time in 300 years, something terrible has happened. Our energy usage per capita has actually declined, and we have actually fallen off the Henry Adams curve that has shown how much energy we have been using as a civilization since 1800. Okay, the exponential increase in the amount of energy that we have been using is what has completely transformed our society in the past 250 years. Literally 250 years ago, we were living on farms, we were banging rocks together, we were very rudimentary in our technological advancement. But since we had the Industrial Revolution, 50 years later, we had the steam engine, the railways, then we had obviously steel, heavy machinery. We also had the oil revolution with the invention of automobiles. And we've also recently had the invention of the microprocessor, which gave rise to the internet, smartphone, computer, etc. All of these inventions have actually increased our energy usage. And the elites want to actually stop technological adoption. They want to stop energy usage. And I'm actually shocked at how successful they have been, okay? I'm surprised the world is going along with these outrageous policies, okay? We have ExxonMobil, one of the largest companies in the world, has come out and actually had to make an announcement that they could be steering away from investing in, guess what? Energy. That's exactly what's made them a multi-billion-dollar company. The reason that they're going to potentially have to abandon their core revenue-producing products is all because of this, okay? It's all because of money printing, okay? It all comes down to BlackRock and the amount of money that they have. Let's hear the words from a BlackRock employee who actually describes himself as a BlackRock gatekeeper, who actually explains how this dynamic plays out perfectly.
I work for a company called BlackRock.
Meet Serge Varley, a recruiter at BlackRock.
All of these financial institutions, they buy politicians. You can take this big ton of money and then you can start to buy people. Let me tell you, it's not who's the president. It's who's controlling the wallet. So it's
And who's that?
the hedge funds, BlackRock, the banks. These guys run campaign financing. Yep, you can buy your candidates. And obviously, we have the system in place. First, there's the senators, and these guys are cheap. You got 10 grand, you can buy a senator.
That's right. You can buy politicians, you can buy government officials, you can do whatever you want if you have the money like BlackRock, okay? And that is how people like Saul Amarova are actually able to get popular with her very communistic ideology in what should be the most freedom-loving country in the world. If for anyone who doesn't know, Saul Amarova was actually handpicked by Joe Biden to become the next OCC, which is the comptroller of the currency in the United States. And in this interview, she said some pretty alarming things.
About industries and firms that are in transitioning. And here what I'm thinking about is primarily coal industry and oil and gas industry. A lot of the smaller players in that industry are going to probably go bankrupt in short order. At least we want them to go bankrupt if we want to tackle climate change, right?
So it's scary videos like the ones I've shown you today, which is leading to the rise in the alternative media space. So people like Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson are actually 10 times more popular than mainstream media outlets. And that is because people have come to the realization that these mainstream media outlets are lying to the people about their money, they're lying to the people about their health, and they're even lying to the people about their education, okay? And that is because the mainstream media outlets are being told what to say. And I believe this chart helps to explain everything that we see in the world today. We can see here that this little flow chart actually helps to explain how policies get enforced in quote unquote democratically elected countries. So most people believe that the government is, for the people and by the people, and our vote actually makes a difference in this whole process. But this chart says the otherwise. Let's have a quick look at this before you call me crazy. But you can see here you have institutions like the BIS, the central banks, the World Economic Forum, and of course the Rockefellers at the very top. And they're what you call the policy makers. And what happens is these guys decide what agendas they want to be pushed down into local governments all around the world, such as less energy usage. That's pretty bad. So what happens is the IMF and the World Economic Forum will tell governments, hey, we need to enforce all of these, 2030 renewable energy agendas, okay? You've seen the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals absolutely everywhere, plastered on government boards all around the world, okay? Or another very popular and interesting one is the fact that the IMF were actually tried to give a loan to Argentina in 2022, but they said, sorry, Argentina, you're not getting this $50 billion loan unless you discourage the use of Bitcoin. And of course, there's probably lots of other policies that were kind of being pushed down by the World Economic Forum and IMF onto the hands of governments in recent years. We're not going to get into that in today's video. I simply want to point out the fact that, hey, it's pretty interesting and we need to be aware of this if we're going to look at how BlackRock is going to attack Bitcoin. Because I think it's strange, anyone who questions the World Economic Forum and their agendas that get pushed down, get completely silenced. Even if you are a government official in Canada, you are not allowed to question what is going on with the World Economic Forum infiltrating your Canadian cabinet.
What we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, is that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened to my colleague's speech. I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has, quoted, infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. And I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern
Here comes.
is the deputy.
Order. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but
you heard it.
The audio is really bad, and the video is really bad as well. And I apologize. I don't know if the member. Okay.
That video is an absolute crack up, and it really does highlight the power dynamic that is going on between these NGOs, these non-government elected institutions, and between our local governments. So we can see here that any countries that don't go along with the agendas seem to have lots of trouble. I'm not going to get into speculations. I'm just going to have a look at this stat. We can see that in the year 2000, Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, and Iran all did not have a central bank. And then in the year 2020, we were only left with 3 countries around the world who did not have a central bank, and that was Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. Okay, just think about all the violence and wars that has actually gone on in those countries over the past 20 years. Again, not making any claims, just going to point out a very interesting correlation that I did find because it does relate to the BlackRock attack on Bitcoin. So let's get into this.
And it wasn't just the BIS that came out this week. We also had the International Monetary Fund. They literally came out and said a ban on crypto is not a long-term solution. And this headline came out a day after the BRICS countries came out, and there was a rumor that they would begin using Bitcoin as a way to dethrone the US dollar. Again, all of this is happening only 2 weeks after the World Economic Forum came out and said there's not enough global cooperation going on. We need to regulate this thing now. So I believe this attack is going to come after Bitcoin's proof of work mining. That's right. We all know that the World Economic Forum has a long history of attacking Bitcoin's energy usage. We can see from this tweet in 2017, they said that by 2020, Bitcoin's going to use the entire of Earth's energy. Of course, that tweet and prediction has proven to be terribly wrong. Bitcoin only uses 0.1% of the world's energy today, and over 50% of the energy Bitcoin uses actually comes from renewable energy sources, okay? But this has not stopped the World Economic Forum and many other people criticizing Bitcoin's energy usage. And there's been a number of people associated with the World Economic Forum who have also attacked Bitcoin's mining over the years. Kevin O'Leary is one of the most popular examples. He's a billionaire, and he said, you know what? I'm not going to buy any of these blood coins that were mined out of China using dirty coal. Like, he said this in 2022. He went on a vicious campaign against Bitcoin mining, and surprise, surprise, he's associated with the World Economic Forum, but he's not the only one. We've had a more recent attack this year in April 2023. Chris Larsen, who of course is the co-founder of one of the largest cryptocurrencies in the world, Ripple, came out recently and bribed Greenpeace over $5 million to try to run this campaign against Bitcoin, criticizing its proof of work mining algorithm. We ran a very vicious marketing campaign. They built this entire statue and they had it on show all across the US. It was made out of Bitcoin mining computer hardwares, and they said, we need to change the code of Bitcoin, okay?
Think Bitcoin's not bad for the environment? Think again. Introducing my newest collaboration with Greenpeace.
Greenpeace is campaigning to change Bitcoin's code so it stops fueling the climate crisis and harming communities.
Enter the Skull of Satoshi, a symbol I built connecting Bitcoin and environmental destruction. This 11-foot skull made from hundreds of pieces of electronic waste, like the kind generated from Bitcoin mining, is months in the making.
So Greenpeace is, of course, one of the largest institutions in the world that focuses on climate change. And Chris Larsen was found to have bribed them over $5 million to partner up with Ripple and run this campaign trying to change the Bitcoin code. And would surprise you, Ripple as well as Chris Larsen are both partnered up with the World Economic Forum. Ripple is even one of their contributors. They've written an article for the World Economic Forum. Surprise, surprise. And it just looks as if everything leads back to everybody's favorite World Economic Forum. We can see here that when this change the code video and marketing campaign was going crazy in April, only a couple of months ago, the World Economic Forum even shared one of the videos they made and said, yes, look at this. A change in the way Bitcoin is coded could almost eliminate its environmental impact, okay? And again, this happened at the same time the Wall Street Journal ran an enormous hit piece on Bitcoin mining that was titled The Real World Costs of the Digital Race for Bitcoin. That article had so many flaws in it. We're going to go through it in a future video. But again, it's the timing of all of these events only in the past couple of months that really has me watching what the world's elites are actually doing. And I think it's that time of the video, okay? I think it's tinfoil hat time. What is going to happen? How are these elites going to attack Bitcoin? Well, I think what they're going to do is do exactly what Klaus Schwab does best, and that is infiltration. They've tried to change the code. The big blockers in 2017 failed, even though they controlled like 80% of all of the economic value as well as all of the mining power in 2017. I think BlackRock's plan is to buy all of the Bitcoin. Hear me out here. I know that sounds a little bit crazy. So I find it super interesting that Coinbase is going to actually be the custodian of BlackRock's spot ETF, okay? Coinbase holds over 500,000 Bitcoin. So that is a huge honeypot. And how much Bitcoin do you think is going to flow into this BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF, okay? We saw that the Canadian spot Bitcoin ETF broke all sorts of records in 2022. That puppy saw $2 billion of inflow in the first day, breaking all sorts of records. And I think that this BlackRock ETF could double that easily. So you're going to see a lot of Bitcoin in the hands of Coinbase as well as BlackRock, okay? And I also find it interesting that up until now in the US, we've had a futures paper-backed Bitcoin ETF in the country, and we have also had an inverse short Bitcoin ETF. Both of those probably suppress the price of Bitcoin and are actually a drag on the real price of Bitcoin because both of those ETFs don't allow you to buy the real underlying asset. But I think that's not where the attack is centered out of. I think the elites are going to try to accumulate as much Bitcoin as they can. And like BlackRock said in that SEC filing, they don't have to pick the most economically valuable chain. That's in their words, that is in their Bitcoin ETF filing, and they are not alone, okay? George Soros, of course, is a very infamous character in the United States and the deep state, but he also has been quietly buying Bitcoin in 2021. We can see here that Soros's fund bought some shares of Marathon Digital, which of course is a large Bitcoin mining company, and also bought some MicroStrategy shares. And Soros isn't the only billionaire out there buying MicroStrategy shares. There are a number of huge banks in the United States, including Bank of America, who has quietly bought enormous amounts of MicroStrategy stock in early 2021. If you want to learn more about all of the billionaires that are currently racing to get exposure to Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, you can check out the video I recorded on that one right there. And if you want to learn about why I believe El Salvador is actually positioned very interestingly to be a thorn in the back of the World Economic Forum, the BIS, and the IMF, I recently recorded a video on my trip in El Salvador, and what I found was awfully interesting. You can check out that video right there. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next video.